God and faith are often considered cornerstones of the African American family. But a growing number of non-believers reject the notion of God. One such non-believer is Mandisa Thomas, president of Black Non-Believers, Inc. She's joining us from Atlanta, Georgia. Hi, Mandisa. How are you today?
I am doing well. How are you?
I'm fine. I wanted to throw out a statistic that I'm sure you are well aware of. 87% of African Americans describe themselves as belonging to one religious group or another. Does that surprise you at all?
Not at all.
And also, it appears that African Americans are the most religiously committed racial or ethnic group in the United States. How does this impact you as someone who is a non-believer, who does not believe in Christianity or Muslim or any sort of religion?
Well, I'm sure you can imagine that with those numbers and with the number of Blacks that do identify as religious, we encounter many family members, friends, and coworkers who bring up some form of belief or church in a discussion daily, if not more than that. And what's disheartening to me is that it seems that the history of Blacks in this country there seems to be a disconnect with the history of religion in our community and how it has affected our community. And we seem to put the institution of the church in the forefront and not as a means of criticizing it for the number of issues that, even if it isn't necessarily responsible for, but it does tend to mask a lot of these issues that we have in our community.
And when you say issues in our community, tell me specifically what you're talking about.
We're talking about our health issues, education, crime, and our overall development as Blacks in this country. Now, there's a history of promoting education, and in fact, there have been many educational institutions that were formed out of churches after slavery. However, it still is reinforced by this sense of belief that somehow we have to incorporate God into our everyday lives, and it doesn't seem to progress beyond that point. You know, people tend to pray away their problems, or they tend to give it to God as opposed to going to the doctor or perhaps researching tangible solutions to any issues that they may have. And this is a problem in our community, considering that we suffer from some of the most preventable diseases, and then more than others.
So what you're saying is that African Americans will not go seek medical assistance, not because they don't have insurance, but because they're relying on their faith and the ability to pray away any problem. Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's part of it. There are now more, there is a tendency not to look into new medical advancements, new technological advancements, for preventable measures. And you do have a lot of Black professionals that are into health and such, but they still incorporate some form of belief into their everyday life. Not that I necessarily discount that. However, there seems to be this idea that we cannot function or that we cannot live our lives without incorporating God or without believing in God, which is certainly not the case.
Now,
there seems to be this debility.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Finish your thought.
No, it seems to be debilitating to our growth and development that that most Blacks cannot even ascertain or even perhaps think of people that don't believe in God, or that there are in our community that don't believe in a God.
Well, yeah, I think I think that African Americans sort of need to have a fuller picture of what's going on in their world. And it's that, yes, there are people who are Christians, and it appears that the majority of African Americans are, but there has to be room in our community for people who are different, people who decide to go a different path, people who, decide, I want to be a Christian, but I don't want to be a Southern Baptist. And I think there seems to be some dogmatic ways of believing that aren't necessarily attractive to a lot of other people. I mean, it gets old. You live in the South, so you know what I'm saying. I'll say hi to somebody, and the first thing they ask me is, where do I go to church? Well, for me, it's offensive, and I'm a Christian. But that's where you start with
Mm-hmm.
me? I can't imagine how you feel.
Absolutely. Can be extremely uncomfortable for us to have the conversation of what church do you attend, or if you believe in God at all. And then once if you actually continue the conversation and say, well, I don't go to church, or why not, it's very,
It never
very
ends. It
intrusive.
is intrusive.
No.
It's just like, oh my
And then
gosh.
and what I try to do is I try to give people the out. I want to, I try to say, hey, I try to avoid the conversation, but then if it persists and it continues, then I go into, well, I don't go to church, I'm atheist. And I don't think that it should be an apprehensive discussion.
Right.
It can be a sensible discussion that we can have, but it should not always be presumed that we all go to church and then all of a sudden you're going to turn around and be offended because I
Right,
don't.
right,
That's
right.
ridiculous.
How many people do you have? How many African American non-believers are in your organization right now?
Well, online we have over and upwards of 1,000 members. In the Atlanta area, we have about a good 200 to 300 people that belong to our meetup forums, and we have a good 50 to 100 people who attend our meetups and meetings interchangeably. And we also do open, our meetings are open to the public. We are open to people who have been questioning their religion for a while, or even believers who are curious about our point of view
But
and
do you
not
feel
believe
like
what it entails.
do you feel like you have to, I don't want to say hide, but that you do have to have you do have to kind of keep your conversation within your group, that you can't really talk freely about it, as the way Christians are very free to talk about their religion in this country and in the South in particular?
We feel like it does have to be guarded somewhat, because some of the content and some of the things that we discuss, in particular, how religion has had a detrimental effect on our community. There is evidence to support our position. And it's a conversation that makes many Christians uncomfortable, because many African Americans in particular believe out of a sense of tradition. It isn't that they may not, it isn't that they necessarily believe all of the tenets that are included, but it is out of a sense of tradition. Your grandmother, your mother, your grandmother, and the grandma before that went to church. And so there is a history of perhaps not questioning why. And we do get into that subject matter, which can prove very difficult. And so sometimes we try to be careful about how we speak and who we speak in front of, but we don't feel like we should have to hide it either.
Right.
Because again, it's a discussion that we need to have with others. And it shouldn't make people uncomfortable, but we know it will. But again, the same way the Christians have this, they feel like they have this monopoly or this right to push their belief. We have every right to express why we don't believe and the issues that we face.
Well, Mandisa Thomas, president of Black Nonbelievers, Inc. from Atlanta, Georgia, I believe you have the right to think and feel whatever you want. I appreciate you coming on the show, because African Americans need to know not everybody is a believer, and that's okay. They're good
Absolutely.
people.
Yes.
You're just as good a person as I try to be every day. How about that?
Absolutely. And there's no reason why we cannot work together to improve our communities.
And love together. Come on now. It's all about the love,
Yes.
All right, Mandisa, thank you so much for being the face of Black Nonbelievers. I appreciate what you do, and take good care, okay?
Hey, thank you very much for having me on.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
All right. Curbing carbon pollution and the positive impact it could have on the health of millions of African Americans. Next on DC Breakdown.